My journey actually started off in various different phases, so I'm talking to you in light of my spiritual context as to how I would frame it. And in the pre-mortal context and the post-mortal context, as we are mortal human beings, we live in this world. We are born, and then we live the life, and then we die, so we are caught up between life and death. And it's a cycle that we all have to live through. So in the mortal portion of my life, or the mortal phase of my life, I was born in Delhi. Of course, my father Manohar Lal Talwar and my mother Kamlesh Talwar. Kamlesh was born in Iraq. So there's a significant history associated with my life in light of what's going on right now in Iraq and Afghanistan. And of course, my father comes from that part of the world which is threatened right now, and the Pakhtuns and the Pathans, and there's a constant war which has been going on. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to separate my life from a mortal and into an immortal existence.
The word yoga means everything has become one. The word yoga means union. So it's a grand unification of the existence. When we say yoga, we are talking about a level of perception where you have seen everything as one.
I was japping the mantra in Raj Yoga. So I started to meditate and perform the 7 steps to I, which is the ultimate, is being one with God, which is what we call as attaining the Om. So that was the point when I realized that Raj Yoga was a way to get to that after doing enough of my bhakti. So we had Karam Yoga, Janani Yoga, which was the Gyan that I had put together, which I still kept compiling as my experiences went through. My Bhakti, which was my Bhakti Yoga, through those mantras and through the scriptures and through the sacred texts, to the extent I could understand in English or some Hindi, even Punjabi, because I can speak, read and write 3 faith languages: Hindi, a little bit of Sanskrit, English and Punjabi. So I started to even recite the Guru Granth Sahib, or Japji Sahib as we call it. This is a summary of the Sikh principles. So any sacred texts that I could get my hands on, I would just quickly pile onto them, get them, pile onto them, read them, make sense of them, and then kept writing about everything that was going to happen. So in the spiritual context, then I started to read the Bhagavad Gita, and it all made sense. Then it all came all together. My bhakti paid off, my jnana paid off, my janana came in through. And hence I said the Karam Yoga, the Bhakti Yoga, the Janani Yoga, and now the Raj Yoga, which is what I started on, compiling the Yama, the Niyama, the Asanas, the Pratyahara, and the Pranayama, which I thought was the most important aspect of my spiritual indoctrination, which the spirit was the breath, the Om that we take at every moment of our life. So Pranayama was the major contributing factor in my spiritual context to reach I, which is called the Om, and the end is the Samadhi. So between the mind and the mind I became very, very focused. And my association at the next level was with Her Majesty the Queen of England, which is when I started to send her some of my works in the context of my spiritual indoctrination, my atonement, and the future of the Commonwealth, which I thought was very powerful because she's the head of the Commonwealth of Nations, and there's 46 nations, 54 nations in the world. So in that context, I started to work myself everything in the future of the Commonwealth 2007, which is when I put all those works together. Very powerful, very meaningful, and hence. But I was still not done. I was still not satisfied. I said there's a higher power beyond that, which is what is written in Hinduism, which is what we call as the self. The universe is inside of you, which means every planet can be recreated inside of you if you do enough bhakti and elevate yourself into what we call as the celestials, the actual Bhagwan. The Bhagwan, whether it is the Lord Vishnu, which is the Lord of sustenance, then it's the Lord of creation, which is Lord Brahma, and then of course the Lord Mahesh, which is the highest power and the Lord of creation, death and destruction and decay, comes through him. And then as you can see, this is what I am at. So through the Gayatri, I transcended myself to a certain level. I did my own yagna in 2010. I performed a yagna in association with a Hindu temple, the Balaji or the Venkateshwara temple, which is a Vishnu temple, which is not too far in Bridgewater, New Jersey. And then I was amazed at the recitation of the 1008 Gayatris. It takes 8 hours to finish the whole yagna. And it was so powerful that I said, there's got to be some manifestation in personification of the Gayatri. How do I capture it? How do I encapsulate it so that there's evidence? Otherwise, there is what it is. How do I know? So I took hundreds of photographs of the yagna, the actual fire. And I said, if there is some personification, why do we do the Gayatri as the invocation of all the gods to appear in the Gayatri and see if it is real or unreal, which was very powerful again. I recited the 1008 Gayatris sitting with the Pandits, and they are all trained in Sri Vidya. They are masters of Vedas, which I thought was very powerful, and they are all Siri. So the guy who performed, there were 3 Pandits who performed this yagna, the Siri Dikshit Sharma. He was only called the Siri after he had been given that title after his finishing of the studies. And it's an Andhra temple, very interestingly. So I associate myself with the Gayatri, and I can show you evidence of Lord Shiva in the flame, sitting and meditating. I could show you the Garuda, which is his ride, which is the eagle that landed right on the kunda, as we call it, where the fire burns. So it was very profoundly evident that there is something very spiritual beyond these baptisms and the rituals and why we form the yagnas in Vedic times. So I took myself back into history, 2000 BC. That's when I profoundly found about the formation of yoga, where it came from. The valleys of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, the excavations, they also demonstrate that they did yoga at that point.